Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Tang Soo Do Focus. My name is Steve Paterini, and I will be your host today. This is our third episode, and the topic today will be warm-ups and stretching, getting prepared for training in Tang Soo Do, as it were. I have been a student at Middlesex Tang Soo Do Academy in Old Saybrook, Connecticut since the late 90s. And through those years, I've learned a lot about getting ready to train and to compete and other things like that. And there's certainly some steps that we can take to try to increase our performance and prevent injuries. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get too deep into warm-ups and stretching, we always talk about preparation. And the preparation for training in Tang Soo Do might actually begin before you even leave your house. And depending upon your age and your abilities and your history of injuries, and yes, I might be speaking more directly to some of the older listeners here, myself included, the preparation required for you just to get your feet on the floor in the dojang and have a successful training session might be pretty elaborate, what you have to do to make that happen. I can remember at a certain period of time I had knee issues and I had back issues, and so half an hour before I was getting ready to leave to go train at the dojang, I would take a long hot shower with the hot water pouring down on my lower back where I had my worst problems there, and then slathering it up with Tiger Balm or Icy Hot, some kind of a liniment like that. Putting the same sort of treatment on my knees and wearing compression bands on my knees, and taping up ankles or taping up toes that might have been suspect or compromised by certain injuries. And honest to goodness, I would have to spend a good 20 minutes to a half hour before even going out the door. And then I'd finally get to the school where I'd tie my belt and get my uniform on, and then get out on the floor and begin the rest of the stretching process. I personally like to change at the dojang, and some places don't have as good a facility for changing, and they expect you to come fully dressed in uniform. Something to me is very ceremonial. There's very I don't know quite how to describe it, but something about going into the changing room, taking off my work clothes or my leisure clothes, putting on my dobuk and tying the knot around my belt, pulling it tight, and then stepping out of the changing room and bowing onto the floor. Something about that just is very special to me, to put me in that Tang Soo Do mindset. I think the word I was looking for was ritual. Ceremony, I think, was what I used before, but I think it's more of a ritual to me, a habit, a certain sequence of doing things. And to me, coming in the door, bowing onto the floor in my street clothes, of course with my shoes removed, going to the changing room, putting on my uniform there, I find a very important part of my training ritual. But of course, if you come fully dressed and ready to go, no one's going to fault you for that either. Certainly have seen parents with their kids tagging along after them in the local grocery store, wearing their belts and their uniforms, and that's fine and needs must, as you need to whatever it takes for you to get to class on time and begin your training. And while we're talking about uniforms, the subject of hygiene comes up, I guess, and certainly during a typical Tang Soo Do workout, you are going to get sweaty, and your feet are going to be on a mat that you share with many other feet. That as much as we remove our shoes and leave them outside of the training area, those mats get pretty dirty even when they're cleaned on a regular basis. So, part of the respect you show your classmates and your school, one, come with a clean uniform. Certainly, you can you use a uniform you've trained in before, as long as it's not too ripe and won't be offensive smelling to the people around you. You don't necessarily need to wash it every single time, but in the summer, or if you're sweating, I know after sparring classes, I walk out and I could just about wring out my dobuk top, and if that's the case, then yeah, chuck it in the laundry and certain schools and certain classes, they allow you to train in your belt, your karate pants, and a t-shirt, and that's a little more convenient to take care of. But if you come to a class and there's ketchup stains on your dobuk, or just whatever stains on your karate pants, that's just not very good, and almost disrespectful. So of course, if laundry day is Friday and it's Thursday night, don't not come to class because your uniform might have a little dirt on it, but overall you should be coming with a relatively clean uniform. And again, a clean you. If you had spent all day working construction outside on a ladder somewhere, sweating all day, then you probably wanted to take a shower before coming to train anyway. But again, you don't want to knock over the people you're training with when you have to get together and put hands on each other, host and soul or ilsusik training. So in any event, it's nice to come with a clean uniform and a relatively clean body. Another thing you might want to pay attention to is the length of your toenails, which I know sounds a little bit off the wall here, but I can remember testing for one of my Shodan Bo tests, black belt candidate, and a fellow I was sparring with, not young teenager, he was about 17. Hey, listen, we're a kicking art. Tang Soo Do is known for their kicks, and if you've got the flexibility, certainly head kicking. And Jason totally didn't mean to, but he threw a roundhouse kick that came a little too close, and his toenail cut the top of my eyelid and started bleeding into my eye during a Shodan Bo test. And luckily it wasn't too bad, and I was able to stanch the bleeding and finish the test. But it's just kind of gross, and two, you just want to make sure that you're not smashing your toes when you're kicking the bag or pads. And again, certainly you wouldn't want to cut one of your classmates with a long toenail. So keep a good care of your feet. Certainly calluses and things like that can become a problem as well, cracking, splitting, and all that manner of stuff. But I think keeping your toenails short would be certainly something that I would recommend for people that are training in Tang Soo Do. So in the last episode, I went over the protocol involved in getting a class started with the bowing and meditation and paying respect to the senior students. And shortly after that, the most senior student or instructor might turn the class over to a lower ranked student to conduct the warm-ups. That's a good way to allow those newer leaders in your school to have the chance to exhibit some leadership and practice, and get a little bit of experience being in front of a crowd of people, which, as we know, is one of the greatest fears of most people, is speaking in front of a crowd, or being up in front of a room full of people looking at you for instruction or direction. So that's a common thing. Sometimes the head instructor, including Kwon and Volker, will run us through the warm-ups, depending upon the mood they're in, or whether they have other things to take care of off the mat or off the floor of the dojang. And typically, we're going to start out slow, obviously, and warm up. I've been at schools where jumping jacks, a little bit of running in place, some sort of thing to get your heart beating and maybe break a little sweat first is involved. Certainly nothing wrong with that. You don't want to exert yourself too much when you're cold. But typically, the stretching process, I would say, begins, at least in our case, with a full body stretch, since it's a full body workout that we do. Things like rotating the head and stretching out the neck and the shoulders, crossing the arms, twisting, circling the hips, circling the knees, bending down, touching the toes, reaching for the sky, stepping out to the side and doing lunging stretches and straddle stretches and such. But again, it's going to vary from place to place. Certainly two different specific types of stretching would happen. One being dynamic stretching, where you're in motion and doing things like swinging your legs up and down to stretch out your hamstrings, doing things like that. And then there's going to be a little more static stretching, holding a pose for a long period of time. Perhaps a hurdler stretch, traditionally done in a lot of sports. And it's going to vary from person to person, your ability to do these things. But mostly you want to take a good 10, maybe 15 minutes, get your body warm, stretch your muscles out, because throughout the course of the class, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to strain those muscles in some way, and you don't want to have any injuries. I think in the last episode I had a little sidebar comment toward the end about how there's a beneficial time after class is over, after you've been bowed out and dismissed from the class, where you're warm and sweaty, and that's a good time to do a little extra stretching or work on some techniques that you were trying to improve upon during that class, or correct some mistake you had been pointed out to you. Hey, there's a period of time before class that could be beneficial. And sometimes people will show up 10, 15 minutes early for class, and you see them out in the lobby hanging out, chatting, and socializing, which there's nothing wrong with that. Or sometimes I'll see students standing off to the side of the dojo, off the mat while the current class is going, and they're just standing there. And I'm thinking to myself, goodness gracious, stretch, at least stretch, if not work on a form or work on something. And if you can begin class wet, as we like to say, sweaty, a little warmed up, maybe with a bit of a lead on your stretching over the people that are just walking in at the last minute and catching up with the rest of the class, that's going to be to your advantage. And depending upon your situation, again, if you're a teen or a child who you could say, hey, mom, dad, the class is at 6:30, drop me off at 6:15. I want to stretch out and warm up a little bit first. That gives you a good chance. And maybe you could ask a senior class member who is also there ahead of class for some guidance or some advice, or to watch you do your form or a technique and give you some feedback. Those are the moments I really think are what separate really good Tang Soo Do students from the rest of the pack. I always like to say that training happens during class. That is our lesson. But just like if you were a musician, if you're a kid in the school band and you don't practice outside of the lesson you have, the instruction you have with your band teacher, you're not going to do very good when it's a recital. You need to put in that time outside of the lesson, outside of the training. So to me, I've always said training happens during class and practice happens before or after class, or perhaps at home, in your basement, in your bedroom, in your garage, your back deck, your backyard, or whatever. But if you're not putting in extra time outside of the time between bows and during class, you're probably not progressing in the way that you should be. And if you've ever wondered, like, wow, that guy's really good, or that girl, look at the way she's kicking, I wonder what. Well, maybe they're just putting in a little extra practice time outside of the training that you see them at. So just a little thought there. Now, I assure you that I am a loyal Tang Soo Do practitioner, and that being said, I have had the opportunity to train with many other martial artists across many disciplines, Olympic judo judges, and actual UFC champions, including a fellow by the name of Bill Superfoot Wallace, who was a professional kickboxer back in the 80s and early 90s, who actually was undefeated in his career as a professional, and was legendary for his kicking ability. And I remember hanging out with him after the seminar, and a bunch of us, of course, were all gathered around trying to soak up any wisdom he might have for us. And at the time, he was probably in his 60s, and doing some pretty impressive splits and stretches and putting his forehead on his knee on either side and such. And he talked about the 3 T's of stretching, and they were time, tension, and temperature. And so might not be in that order, but it sounds like temperature would be first, where you got to be warm. And as I'm recording this, it happens to be July and in the middle of a historic heat wave here in New England. And it's certainly easier to stretch in the summer than it is in the winter. But, warming up, being sweaty, having that body temperature elevated certainly allows your muscles to stretch more easily. So that would be the temperature. And then the tension, of course, we go for, extending that stretch and literally stretching those muscles to the point of discomfort, not injury. But stretching is not really a comfortable thing if you're doing it correctly. It should be a little bit of discomfort there. And then the time. So you get into that position and you hold that stretch, and just holding it for a few seconds isn't going to work. You hold it for a a longer duration of time, often you'll find that your body will release a little bit. And so you'll be holding a stretch, and if you hold it for 10, 15, 20 seconds, all of a sudden you'll notice you can go a little further. And if you relax and breathe, and again, it's not pretty comfortable at that point, but give it a few more minutes. And again, with that warmth in your body, because you're already sweating and warmed up, you might find that, exhaling and giving it another few seconds, and then you release, and you'll find that you can stretch even a little further. So time, temperature, and tension are the 3 T's of stretching. And I always remembered that from that seminar with Superfoot Wallace so many years ago. So as I mentioned a minute ago, stretching can be uncomfortable, certainly. And I find that to many young people, particularly teenagers, it's very boring and tedious practice, and they give it a half-hearted effort at best. A lot of them at their youthful ages, particularly young ladies for some reason, have a ridiculous flexibility innately without being forced to do the amount of stretching that the older adults in the room might have to do to achieve the same results. But I've always noticed that it's those kids, I call them kids, teenagers, but also, younger children, 10 and below, the ones that really put the effort into their stretching routine. Those are the ones that you see really becoming the leaders, really becoming the champions at the tournaments, and the ones that impress you most when it comes through a testing cycle. There's something to be said for doing those, what they call the dirty work. There's a famous football coach who said something about playing to his football players, saying something about, this is why you lift all those heavy weights. I'm paraphrasing there, but same thing. We want to stretch so we can kick high. We want to stretch so we can have that extra area of targeting when we're sparring and be able to go head height and not just body height. It gives us one more tool in our arsenal when we're sparring somebody. It makes our forms look better when we can extend those kicks to a much higher height. And it's just more athletic and a better workout. So the stretching is really important to achieve that. I would also say that stretching would increase your speed. Tension is the enemy of speed. And so the more flexible, the more relaxed you are, I think Tom Brady likes to use the word pliable, which I think might be something slightly different, but it's in the neighborhood of being flexible and being fast. Tense and fast don't seem to go together. So I would say that stretching is going to increase your speed of your technique. It's going to increase the height or the distance you can throw a technique, particularly a kicking technique. And again, even as young people, but certainly as you get out of your teens and into your 20s, you're going to find injuries if you're a training martial artist. Truth is, you're going to find injuries if you're a soccer player or if you play, basketball league at the Y or something. But again, having that flexibility and that consistent stretching routine is likely to prevent a lot of injuries you might otherwise find visited upon you. And, I've had all sorts of pulled muscles before. They're not fun. And if they could have been prevented with a little bit of extra stretching, when I had a time machine, I'd go back and make sure I did that extra little effort there to get those muscles more pliable and allow me to continue training. Because again, as you get older, and if you're a more mature listener of this podcast, you'll know what I mean is oftentimes my level of exertion might not be 100% because I want to be able to train in a few days, not in a few months. And sometimes, youth has a certain resiliency to it where they can push themselves a little further. As an older practitioner, you need to defend your body and prepare your body in a more thorough way, and stretching is definitely a good key to that. And just a little word about cross-training and doing other activities that might benefit your Tang Soo Do training. There's certainly in the fall, it's football and soccer season, and in the winter, it's basketball, wrestling, and in the spring, it's track and baseball and lacrosse. But as Master Volker likes to say, it's always Tang Soo Do season. In other words, we're a sport, an art, an athletic endeavor that happens 52 weeks a year, 365 days a year. We are available for training there's no season to it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Although certainly in the spring and fall, it seems there's a certain tournament centric emphasis in our training, trying to get ready for sparring and performing our forms, maybe breaking or weapons competition. But I would say that certainly Tang Soo Do is a year-round thing, but there's nothing wrong with playing baseball, basketball, soccer, doing things like that. And the benefits of Tang Soo Do, I think, often translate better to those activities than the benefits from those activities translating back to your Tang Soo Do training. I think anybody who's done those sports would agree with me. But I would just say, certainly to you young people, to you middle school, high school students, hey, might be the only chance you get to play baseball with your friends and compete on a high level. So I wouldn't want to take that away from you. But I would say that, don't lose your focus on Tang Soo Do. Try to get your classes in and, try to avoid preventable injuries that will take you off the dojang floor as well as out of your game in your particular sport. To our older students, I might recommend, yoga, Pilates, things like that. When I first started training in Kung Fu back in college, my first semester of Kung Fu, I had doubled up my phys ed requirements, and I also took yoga. And my stretch improved, my ability to extend my kick higher and touch my toes and all those other things that I had never been able to do in years past. The growth was amazing by adding in yoga, which, as most of you should know, is a very gentle form of stretching, breathing, being aware of your body, which actually sounds a lot like what we do in martial arts as well. So I sometimes will say that yoga and martial arts are almost like cousins, even though we're probably the more violent and aggressive cousin of those two. But it's always good. Certainly we've had practitioners that are runners, jog or run regularly, people that hit the gym and, do weight training. Nothing wrong with that, again, as long as you're being careful not to have injuries rack up with you. But I think, if you were to look for a mind, body, spirit, whole body workout, you'd have to look pretty hard to find something that's going to work as good as Tang Soo Do. So those other things are great, but I would like you to keep your focus on Tang Soo Do, as it were. And just one more thought on stretching before I let you go from this podcast is I think consistency is the key to good flexibility and an important aspect of your stretching and warming up routine. It would be far better for you to stretch 5 minutes every day of the week than to spend 30 minutes stretching twice a week. I think that the regularity, the consistency of stretching is going to help to keep you healthier and help you keep the gains you've had and keep you from losing any of the flexibility you've worked so hard for. I mentioned before, it's easy to get that little extra bit of stretch in the summer, and in the winter, as our bodies and our homes and everything else get much colder, we tend to tense up and it's hard to maintain that flexibility. But consistently stretching, doing some yoga, doing some stretches every day in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, outside of class, as well as obviously during your training sessions, is going to benefit you greatly throughout your career in Tang Soo Do. Wow, that 24 minutes went by pretty fast for me. I hope they went just as fast for you, and I hope you were maybe able to glean some useful information from my ramblings on stretching, warming up, and preparing for training in Tang Soo Do. I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. I appreciate your time and attention and kind consideration. I would like you to please subscribe and like the podcast. Share it with people you think might be interested in what I'm talking about. And again, thank you for your time. Keep training, and I will see you in the next episode. Tang Soo. Thank you for listening to TSD Focus a podcast on all things related to the martial art of Tang Soo Do. This was episode 3 on warm-ups and stretching and preparation for training. Please tune in for our next episode.